Hello, money magicians. How are you? So, welcome to yet another Money Magic podcast. If you've just joined, my name is Vangile, and I am the founder of Wealthy Money and also your host for this podcast, the Money Magic Podcast. I help mainly women of color heal ancestral money trauma so they can fall in love with their bank accounts, increase income, and live their best lives. And I've said mainly women of color, but today we're interviewing one of my clients, Phemelo, and he is a healer, an entrepreneur, and just someone with such incredible wisdom. He actually attends a lot of fireside chats. But this most recent one, we're talking about the God wound, which has been, oh my gosh, in my heart and my spirit. And he spoke about something around the different types of labors, spiritual labor, mental labor, and physical labor. And it completely shifted me on such a deep level. So I just thought, let's have a conversation with him, but let's also learn about his money journey, his take on trauma, and also his experience in the Money Magic course. So welcome, Phemelo. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Van. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, so Phemelo, let's start off by you telling us, how do you describe yourself as a soul and what do you do for a living?
Okay, so nna ke Phemelo, ba mpitsa Kgabo. Ke morwa Matome le Mpho, ke motlogolo wa Ntswelenyane le Ntlhatlhi, le Mosologane le Mmalefyane. Ba re ke Kgabo, ba re ke motho Kgabo Madibana. Ba re kgomo ya tiba ga tlhako tsa pele ka tsa morago go itsemeletse o tiba. Eya, nna ke nna mana ka naganong. Kolobe ya rileng ba nna le basadi ba batlang lepeke ya go epolola motlho a re se tshwenyegeng ke tshwere sefene sa kolobe. Yes, these are the people that have come before me, the people that have guided me to this space. So as a soul, I had an agreement with them that I would come down and I would serve this lineage, and also I would have an opportunity to explore and increase my ability to understand the various wonderful mysteries that are there waiting for all of us in this life that we have. So yeah, I'm a thinker. I love thinking, but my idea of thinking is different from, I think, what most people think it is. When I say think, it's be still and allow myself to really understand the messages that come from my heart, that come from my intuition, and guide me to find the people, work with the people, find the spaces, work with the spaces that are calling me and are most urgent for me in my life's mission. And yeah, I suppose in a way that's what's led me here to this interview.
Oh, wow. Wow. I love this. So, Phemelo, if someone had to come from another planet, an alien, if you will, they asked you, what is money? What would your response be?
What is money? Money, I like to refer to the one thing I agreed with Noah, I think it's Noah Harari, or I forget his name, but I read his book, Homo Deus, and he said money is the physical manifestation of human trust. It's how we trust each other without having to know each other. And for me, trust is defined in two ways. Trust is character and consistency of action. So money is the thing that we can consistently rely on to work with each other, to build with each other. And as it's evolved for me from what it used to be, because a lot of how I used to think about money was how bad it is and how much it hurts people and how much it deprives people of the joys of this life. So yeah, money is an energy. Money is an energy and something that you can choose to use for you and help build you, or choose to work against you. And yeah, that's what I believe.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's actually quite a beautiful way to put it. Um, Out of interest, how did your journey with money, of seeing money being a way to deprive people of certain things, change? Can you walk us through how that shift came to be to where you are now?
Yeah. So it all started with my family. What was what happened in the beginning is my mother came from a family of traders and farmers. And my mother's father, my grandfather, was one of those gentlemen who owned like the village general trading store. So he was doing quite well for himself. But at some point he fell ill and was no longer able to, attend to the store, and had to leave it to his family, and it fell apart. The business fell apart. And on my father's side, my father was that guy. He was very innovative at a very young age, very, very, very smart, very, very clever with the ways that he saw how money can be used, and the networks that he built around himself to make money. And so he had like the first television in the village. He was doing a lot of like really nice stuff. The first car, he was doing very nice things in the village at a young age. But at some point, he also fell into the trap of um, becoming a bit disillusioned, and then losing his way around how to treat that money once he had it. And this manifested at home with at month end, when we had money, we'd have lots of treats, great. It would be very happy. My father would be home. My mother would have company. And then when the money went away, my dad would have to go away as well. That's what it meant to me as a child. My dad has to go away, so we don't have a father. My mother's not so happy because she has so many responsibilities she has to take care of. And she has to get by. So she was very good at building small businesses to get by. But they cost her a certain amount of freedom because she was quite young as well. And that's when I started having this idea that money deprives people, one, of joy. It deprives them of their loved ones that they hold dear to themselves. Money is a fleeting thing. It's not really for us. It visits, but it doesn't stay around for very long. And yeah, this relationship just kept proving itself over and over, with the schools that we'd go to, and not at times having enough money to pay for the school fees, and being kicked out of class, in front of everyone else, and embarrassed because we're those children, not being picked up from school on time because my dad was too busy and he'd forgotten that we were at school, and having to sleep over. So it was a constant reinforcement in a child's mind that money is this thing that really tears apart the family. And if it wasn't there, maybe we'd be better off. So yeah, that's the initial relationship I had with money.
Yeah. That part about being kicked out of class, I've heard so many of the money magic students recount that trauma, which you've also seen in the group where they talk about that. And for me, that has been just like, what? Yeah, my uncle didn't always pay school fees when we were in primary school, when he was the one paying, and then my dad took over. And luckily, we didn't have to suffer that embarrassment. But I don't ever remember that happening at school. And just the fact that our schools would take this out on children. It's like I've been reading in the US how kids whose parents don't pay lunch money are literally being stopped from eating at school. What kind of society are we? Right? So there's so much trauma there. And oh, but one thing I do resonate with is being picked up late. Oh my God, or being forgotten at school. That would happen often to me, because it's like people are busy working and all that. But what it did for me was it translated into this trauma as I've been doing the not good enough meditation in lesson 19. Some of these memories have been coming up, and one of them was this being left at school, several of these memories. And what came up was, I'm just not important enough. I'm not memorable enough. I'm like, wow, as a child, I took that on and I didn't even know it. You know, like trauma is such a subtle thing. On the surface, well, you were just picked up late after all kids have gone to school, all that, have gone home, all that, not a big deal. But what I was forming at the deepest levels of my subconscious were these beliefs. Just not important enough, I'm not memorable enough. And I took that even into my money and into my work, which brings me to my next question. So when you reflect on these memories and you've been doing the inner work, what are some beliefs that you took on from some of these events, and how did they affect your relationship with money?
So the school was also a Catholic school, so it was a convent school. So there was also, we're speaking about the God wound earlier on. There was a lot of that involved as well, because we'd go to mass every Wednesday. But the same people felt no sort of like shame in pulling us out of class like that. So very early on, I remember asking one of the nuns that because I was really concerned at a young age about this God character. And I asked one of the nuns, so God exists in our faith, and should we stop believing him? Would he still be there? Because it looks like, at some point he's not showing up as much as he should. And now that I'm doing the work, I found that what's happening, hurdles were around I'm not being good enough. My first hurdles were around vows of service, because as the firstborn child, I got very used to trying to make things better until money came back and then it could do its job, in my family. So people pleasing, trying to maintain the calm, trying to take care of my siblings, as much as I could, trying to outperform everyone at school. I was one of those as well. So I had to do a lot of work around that, finding value in just being outside of performing, finding value in the work that I choose to do, because it fulfills me, rather than the work that I choose to do because it feels like the right thing to do because of the demands I perceive that my family has on me, that my network, my social network has on me, and that my partner has on me. So I had to do a lot of that vow service work, a lot of that vow of invisibility work. Had to do a lot of not good enough, a lot of not good enough. Um, and and relating to the God wound, so the money magic course came in when I had started my my first proper initiation, guided initiation by a mentor spiritually. And when I was now establishing a relationship with my ancestors, a personal relationship with my ancestors. And what that did for me was I didn't immediately focus on the God wound because I felt like I still needed a lot of answers from my own sort of people first to understand what was going on and what was the meaning of all the stuff that had happened to us, that happened to me up until the point that I made this work. And so a lot of the meditations around Akashic records, there's a meditation around the womb that I remember that very well. The womb healing that I did, and that was quite revealing for me, because in that meditation, I remember a lot of the matriarchal ancestors showed up, and even the people that are still here. So my sisters showed up, my mother showed up, and my aunts showed up to that meditation. And immediately after, I remember doing that meditation, it changed very subtly the relationship that I have with my sisters, my mother, and my aunt, in especially how they feel about approaching me with the things that are worrying them, or the things that they haven't been able to speak about with me before. Interesting, in my practice, my healing practice, to this day, I still have never had a male patient show up for treatment. I've only ever treated women.
Wow.
And so yeah, that's another thing that got revealed from this work. So now my idea of money has really changed, because I can see, especially with my relationship with the divine, now it's changed. I no longer see, and sorry for rambling, um,
No.
I no longer see that God figure that I saw as a child, as a he.
Mm,
Um, I refer to the divine as she, or mother.
mm,
And for a long time, it was very conflicting for me, because when I prayed and when I meditated personally, this is who I'd be speaking to and who I'd get a response from. But when I go into a church and I pray out loud, it felt wrong, and very it created a bit of dissonance for me to say she, because it's like, what are all these people gonna think, you know?
mm.
But I've gone beyond that now, and I've been able to resolve that for myself, in realizing that at this point, part of what we were talking about, my soul's mission, is to raise the divine mother, because this is her time now, and she's very missing from what we consider to be our spiritual livelihoods. And that part allowed me to access, like, abundant love, unconditional love, and access the idea that I was not born to suffer, and therefore money was not created for me to suffer. Because of it, money was created for me to express this abundance that's there anyways. So yeah, full circle, but a wonderful journey, I won't lie.
Wow, what an incredible journey. I mean, I remember, and I have to ask this question. I remember you coming on a call and telling me that you're doing the womb meditation. I was like, wait, a cis man is doing a womb meditation. What is happening? Because I also didn't know that men could do the womb meditations.
Yeah.
So for me, I found that so wow. And I'm so glad that you shared that and you shared your experience. For men out there who are like wondering, how does this come to be? How do you do a womb meditation? Please unpack, because I also cannot. Like, I've had men buy the Woman Money Journal, really cis men, not identifying as anything else, and they are also using the Woman Money Journal. And I have really been super fascinated by that, but I haven't had the courage to ask how it works.
Okay. So I think it's a nice segue to what you were talking about or introducing earlier in the different types of labor that we have as people. So in the meditations that I was doing at the time, I quickly realized one that the guides, because you call forth a guide or a facilitator from your spiritual sort of counsel to work with you through some of the meditations that involve your ancestry or your spiritual guidance. And what I found was every time I'd make that call, it would be a matriarchal figure that would come forward. And that became very clear for me after a few of those meditations that I am one guided primarily by very strong matriarchal figures. They're at this moment in my journey at the forefront of my sort of spiritual guidance. And so that made it a bit easier, I suppose, to say, let me slip into this womb meditation. Um, Going back to what I was saying in being still and trying to listen to sort of the language of my heart, which is a recent thing that I've understood, and the language of my intuition. It became easier to say, let me step into this thing, because I was already in a place where I'm now praying to the Divine Mother, and she's shown me how abundant my life is and how much love she has for me. So it's easy for me to say, let me do this thing for the divine feminine. So I go into the meditation, and what I realize is when my sisters come in and my aunts come in and my mother comes in, is that meditation, even though I am a cis man, is not primarily just for me and the feminine lineage in my ancestry. It is me carrying that work for all these women that can't do it for themselves right now, but need it. And that's where the spiritual labor aspect comes in. That we really don't put as much emphasis on how important it is for the healing of our families and our healing, because we mentioned before we started that how important community is to our well-being as people. So what happens is for a lot of my healing journey, I isolated myself and I thought I'd be fine healing in isolation. And eventually I'd come out and be this healed and great individual. And what I realized was that if I'm going to heal, I have to heal in community. That's the true healing. That's when it works. And carrying this spiritual labor for my community is the role that I have been assigned for now, and it is showing benefits. Remember, we used to talk about my sister and in the business and how I struggle with her. Sometimes opening up and saying how she wants to work with me, how I struggled with my dad and our relationship because of past dynamics that I described earlier on. What happened when I started doing the spiritual labor, when I started really, really focusing on community in the meditations, is even with the work that I was doing with the divine feminine, my relationship with my dad got better. and that's because my dad really held his grandmother, my grandfather's mother, his great grandmother rather, and his own mother in very high esteem. And these are the people that are still moving and working with him. So when I do the work to help them find a space to heal and to ground, then funny that result pops up in my relationship with my dad. On my sister's side, she's also able now to come to me with things that before were very hard for her to speak about. And now that has allowed us to, one, fix the dynamic of our family relationship. And then in our business, what that does is communication opens up and things are easier to do and experiment around and iterate. And because we are sort of closer, it's also easier to envision our growth and realize it as a community, and then that then allows our business to prosper without us having to work too hard. So yeah, that's the womb. That's the power of the womb that I discovered, even as a cis man, as you said.
Wow, thank you for sharing this. Firstly, what you've just done for me, and I'm sure for a lot of us, is you've taught us that this work is not gendered,
Mm.
right? And that, like, literally, it comes back to the construct of gender, etc., all those philosophies. But it's that this work is not gendered. And most of us, as we're doing this work, the minute you said, well, I get you're doing the work for the women in your lineage, I have seen how also with my coach, my relationship coach, when I was wanting to be in a relationship and I just didn't feel like it, so much was happening in my spirit around that. She said, we're not going to do this work as in you're going to walk out of here, you're going to heal individually, walk out of here and just have a great relationship. You're going to go out and relationship and still get your heart broken. Luckily, that didn't happen a lot, but it did happen. Like heartbreak did happen. And she was like, and you're going to heal and you're going to learn to do the work in relationship. She said something very powerful to me. She said, so many of us have been hurt in relationship. So our
Yes.
healing has to happen in relationship. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was for me to heal at a deeper level with my relationships and romantic relationships. One of the part of the work that I was guided to do was a lot of vows of loyalty work that women in my lineage had made around men and heartbreak. So we had to heal a lot of the wounding, and I had to call a lot of my male ancestors to hold the space and to see how these vows had come to be, and for them to take responsibility and accountability and really understand how things had played out in the generation, in the feminine, in the bloodline. So that also involved me doing the healing work with the men in my lineage, which was really, really such an interesting dynamic. I didn't have, all I had to do was just be purely me and say, see me, just like I'm sure you just had to see
Mm.
just see those women and just hold space. Oh man, I genuinely love the money magic work. It's also been life-changing for me actually when I talk about it. I mean, I know I teach about money, but for me to do this work, I had to use it also to heal some things in the relationship sphere. And I've just had really wise coaches and healers guide me, to say this is the work. And
Yeah.
healing relationship, healing in community is key. But let's go a little deeper on this. You mentioned spiritual labor. Let's talk about what is the difference between spiritual labor, mental labor, and physical labor?
At this point, I'd say it's quite simply the value that we've attached to each of these labors. That's the only difference. Because and how it works, and how I've found it working for me, in employing these different labors to realize the things that I would love or want to do for myself, is it's all one thing. It's all one thing, but we value uh, the apparent, the tangible physical labor that people see and can engage with. For instance, when you pick up a very heavy box, people can see, oh, that box looks very heavy, and that guy's very hard at work lifting that box. And whereas with mental labor, um, people see you, for instance, sitting, writing, or sitting just thinking, not doing anything physical at all. And it doesn't look like you are very hard at work. And it doesn't look like you're doing much. In fact, it might look like you're being lazy. And so people don't assign too much value to that because it doesn't look like you're contributing. And then the least valued of the three, spiritual labor, is constantly happening. It's happening all the time. But with spiritual labor, it goes beyond with what you have with thinking, where with thinking you're asked to sit and allow your mental sort of faculty to be the one that leads at that time. With spiritual labor, you can't engage in physical work and really attend to spiritual labor. You can't engage with thinking and attend to spiritual labor. It requires you to really find space for yourself, and stillness for yourself, in order to really engage with it in a way that will really, one, add value, or fulfill you, and two, in a way that you'll be able to receive the instructions or the outputs that you need from that labor, in order for it to work for you. So whether it's meditation, whether it's I remember my mother, when I was starting the initiation process, she told me a lot that, so once you're done doing what you need to do, you need to spend a lot of time just sitting on your grass mat. So after you pray, just sit and listen on your grass mat. And that was sort of her sort of instruction around the meditation of allowing my ancestors to speak through my intuition and reach me. So because of what it looks like on the outside, spiritual labor is not valued. And spiritual labor is the core, it's the seed of what informs whether your mental labor or your physical labor is going to result in the thing that you want. Um, if you don't do the spiritual labor, you end up expending a lot of mental labor, expending a lot of physical labor, trying to figure things out, rather than using that mental and physical labor strategically to work on the instruction that you received from the spiritual labor that you've done, from the meditation that you've done, from the contemplation that you've done. So yeah, it was quantified for me last year, especially, where I started doing the money magic work, I think, towards the end of 2022. And at the beginning of 2023, I was not comfortable, because it's never comfortable sort of working through your traumas.
Yeah.
But I was getting into sort of the rhythm of doing the meditations and doing the work. And what it pushed me to do was change how I approached my workday. So I stopped working um 8 hours or 12 hours, and I cut down my actual time sitting doing work on the business or for the business to 4 hours a day. and to 4 days of the week. That's what happened that's the guidance I got from the spiritual work and the meditation. Like, you're doing too much, and all that much is not adding up to anything. You need to focus, so that when you do act, it's impactful. So I cut it down to 4 hours, and surprise, surprise, I'm getting all the work that I need to get done. Everything else that doesn't fit in the 4 hours was not important. It was stuff that was just keeping me busy. And then this strange thing happens in our business. We start building relationships that are bringing in new business that we never conceived that we would be doing before. This business is high value business. And then all of a sudden, the new business requires me to find a new way to finance how we do our business. And I had no idea, because I remember the first order needed like R250,000, and we didn't have that money. But because for some reason, in this place of ease, it came up that there's this grant that's happening, and an EST program that I can be a part of, and they're able to assist, but they don't have the product I need. They don't have the lending I need. So then again, guidance spirit tells me to look, just go to them and present your idea of how you need the financing. And then we become the first business that then they model a new way of financing our businesses through, and we get the financing we need. All of a sudden, we move from revenues of, at the end of 2021, we were sitting at 400k. At the end of year end, February 2024, we were sitting at 6 million. And this happens when I start doing less and not doing more. But what it actually is in reality is I increased my spiritual labor, and then that helped me really focus my mental and my physical labor.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow. I hear this. I mean, we hear this all the time in the Money Magic course, right? Where people are constantly like, we did the work, we're doing it, we're working less, and things are shifting. And I'm glad you shared that, because I shared, guys, in the fireside chat how 2023, I did a swap in my world. I think that's also why I realized I couldn't do the podcast. I never had enough time, because I went to the extreme of mental labor and physical labor. I've never worked so hard in my freaking life, in my business, in all my businesses. And I have never seen my revenue plummet as much as 2023. So 2024, because I am, after all, a Money Magic student. So November 2023, as I'm watching this, I go, I've got to go back to Vipassana, because there's something that happens when you're in this physical labor phase. You get too anxious to pull yourself back from working hard. You kind of get stuck. And by that time, my vows of service were fully in gear and fully triggered. So I just knew that something is wrong, and I knew that I needed to go back to spiritual labor, but I couldn't. It was so weird. Like, I know it, but I'm like, no, because I need to keep working harder. And I now changed to listen to podcasts that teach about the mental labor. Remember, I've been in legal battles, so like that's all mental, physical, everything. My mom was saying to me, don't you think that maybe you should go back to your spiritual work rather than doing this? And because she's the voice that's saying that, now my vow of rebellion is fully also triggered. No freaking way. So 2023 was my year that I'm going to prove how hard I can work.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. So in November, I decided enough is enough. I'm going to Vipassana. And Vipassana kind of broke what I consider a weird spell with that vow, because it got me back into just hours of meditation.
Mm.
Got out of there, and it's funny. I was in Vipassana for 10 days. My revenue doubled, as I'm sitting in Vipassana. And I came out of there and I was like, okay, I am not going to lose this momentum, because now I was just meditating, even doing my Vipassana meditations, let alone my money magic meditations were being done once or twice a week. And then I tried getting back into the podcast, just never had time to record, was fully exhausted. Came back and I just sat up until February doing meditations, doing work. Things started to shift. I mean, really shift. December, January, February, I could feel the shift. I've been podcasting continuously. I'm lessening things. I'm getting things off my plate, getting rid of things, more and more things. Just I'm now back at yoga, back at running. I didn't even have time for running, for yoga, for anything. And now I'm not joking when I say I sit down these days and I'm like, how did I have no time?
Yeah.
I had no time. I was working, not getting any results, approaching everything. Nothing wrong with the legal stuff. That's truly important. But also the amount of time and energy it was taking me was so unreal. Now I feel like I'm still doing that stuff, but I'm coming back to center. So no, I completely and totally get you. Another interesting thing is that my savings, last year I was still working on the mental labor, right?
Yes.
And the physical labor. That just was not happening the way that I wanted it to. This year already, I created that savings plan and thing that I shared all from my mental labor. I try to follow it. I continue to do the meditations. Completely have already surpassed what I wanted to save in a year. And we're not
Yes.
halfway through the year. So, you know what? Spiritual labor. But I wanted to also talk about one thing. One thing that you mentioned, and I think it's best that you explain it, is why does spiritual labor not feel like labor? Why are we so programmed like I was in 2023, even knowing better, to discard it?
So what comes to mind is how the word purpose is thrown around quite a lot. And I just thought on purpose. So instead of follow your purpose, do things on purpose. So do things intentionally. Do things because there's conviction behind why you're doing them. You can feel them in your body, that your body supports you doing these things. So that's for me why spiritual labor is undervalued, because our to get to a point where you can receive guidance from your intuition, to get to a point where you can trust the guidance that you receive from your intuition, it involves a lot of working through, and this is what the meditations also help me do, somatically get closer to my body and what my body feels and how my body responds to the things that I'm thinking and the things that I'm doing. So getting to a point where spiritual labor is useful for you is getting to a point where you're able to clear away all the misinformation, all the beliefs that are not true around yourself and how you identify with spirit or your guidance or what leads you, and then getting to a point where you don't just believe the guidance that you're being given, you can feel it.
Mhm.
You can really feel it in you. So when I was talking about that 4 hour day, I could I didn't have that anxiety that normally comes with physical work that is so addictive, that says okay, what's the next thing? Okay, what's the next thing? I could really, at the end of my 4 hours, like knock off and be okay, and not still be thinking about what I could have done or what I should be doing. I was happy to leave that space because my body and my spirit were aligned in this is what's most useful to me right now. So it's a very personal journey. No one can inform that journey for you. No, no one can tell you whether this works or not. You have to invest the time and invest the space and the stillness that you need to get to a point where the spiritual work is embodied, and you carry it with you, and then you start assigning value to it rather than waiting for someone else to assign value to it for you, which is what happens with physical and mental labor. Me thinking back to when I was younger and I was um, getting awards for being the smartest or doing the best in tests. That's when I started understanding the value of mental labor to me, because it meant I would start being acknowledged for how I think, or being able to think better than other people. And with physical labor, it's the same thing. It's how we're raised competitively to see who gets the most out of or who does better than. And that's very apparent with physical labor, whether it be in sports, in athletics, or whether it be in the office. In physically being in the office every day, and you're the guy that never takes leave and is never sick, and is always on call. You're very loyal to the company. So that kind of physical labor um, gained priority over everything else because it was the most acknowledged socially. Uh, for me, I think it boils down to our value systems are not developed in isolation. We don't develop them for ourselves. They're developed in community, and most of what we've come to value in terms of labor has been what we've seen and absorbed from our community. But if you take the time to find and ground yourself in your spiritual practice, you'll find that the value of spiritual labor will change the way you perceive how your community is looking at you to show up, and where you can show up for your community. And then that physical labor changes, that mental labor changes, because you're now showing up on purpose, showing up intentionally, because you've decided already, and it's been embodied when you were doing your spiritual labor.
Mm, mm, mm. Wow. That is just so, so powerful. I think you're right about that. We value physical labor because it's labor that people can see us doing, right? And it comes back to our need to be validated. So when I'm sitting in meditation, no one sees that as labor, and I tend to lie down in meditation on my bed until like 2 p.m. Nobody sees that as labor. Like, people are coming in and out of if the cleaning lady comes, or my husband is watching me. Luckily, he's a money magic student as well. So I dodge the bullet there. But like, every part of me wants to labor and wants to show that I'm working, because you want that validation. You're such a hard worker.
Yeah.
But then I just realized this is killing me. It is literally not helping me, because I can't even find free time to nourish my body, to go take a walk, to go to yoga, to sit on my yoga mat. What kind of life is this? And one thing that I love that you just said was that this is personal. So someone's ancestors may come through and say, you need to just work a little bit more for the next few months compared to your own ancestors, right?
Yeah.
And your own guides. So not expecting that all of us are going to get the same kind of guidance.
Yes.
I think that is really, really key. So, Phemelo, you have given us so much today, and I am just so, so grateful. Before we end off, I wanted to ask, how do people get hold of you? Tell us what you do. You also do work with people in terms of spiritual work. People want to go deeper in their spiritual journey with you. How do they reach out to you? How do they work with you?
So at the moment, I'm using a lot of the guidance that I receive from spirits to assist people in their businesses. And us, especially sort of like matriarchs that are raising businesses, because part of the invisible labor, I think you spoke about this at one point, that exists apart from spiritual labor is the labor that women do, and are still expected to come equally or contribute equally to conversations when the reality is they're doing far more than the pro rata ration of equal would have us think. So I'm helping a lot of matriarchs sort of build their businesses, and for that you can find me on LinkedIn at Phemelo Sello. I'm doing that work there. And for my spiritual work, or the healing, the other part of the healing that I do here in my village, living in my grandmother's house at the moment, working from there. You can go to Instagram at Kgabo Mopapa. Kgabo is KGAPO underscore MOPAPA. Mopapa. Yes. There you go.
Nice. Thank you so much, Phemelo, for sharing your knowledge so openly. And thank you so much, Money Magicians, for tuning in. If you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I want to be part of this money magic course and this journey, which is truly so magical, as we've shared. I tried doing live by just not prioritizing the money magic work last year, as I shared in 2023. And it didn't quite work out for me. So I am a full advocate again of the money magic work. And it's what has led me back to the Money Magic podcast, because I'm like, this work is beyond incredible. So if you want to do that and you want to increase your income, I mean, you've heard many different guests that I've had on here, including Phemelo, talk about how they've increased their income as they've been doing the work, then definitely check out the link below. It's wealthy-money.com/money magic. Again, wealthy-money.com/money magic, but you'll find it in the description below. Hit me up. You can go sign up directly from that link, or you can hit me up and ask for a discovery call. Let's have a discovery call. Let's chat. See if you want to come into the Money Magic course. And for people who are wanting more one-on-one work, I'm a person that works really well with coaches. As I've mentioned, I do both courses and coaches. But if you want coaching work, I am also available for one-on-one coaching. As of this recording, I have one spot left for my one-on-one coaching. So if you want that spot, hit me up. Let's have a discovery call. Again, you can go to the link below. It will send you to, there's a coaching link below. Let's have a discovery call. Let's chat. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next Money Magic podcast. Have a fantastic day further. Bye.